There is a German poet named Hans Sachs, a shoemaker from Nuremberg, who became internationally celebrated in the 16th century as the great voice of popular humor, medieval satire, and religious reform. He has been praised, studied, commemorated, and even immortalized in Richard Wagner's opera. The glory he received, however, would have belonged with far more justice to his Portuguese contemporary, Gil Vicente. And the fact that most people today know Hans Sachs and have never heard of Gil Vicente tells us something important. Not about the quality of the work, but about the accidents of literary history. Gil Vicente shared with the German shoemaker the popular humor, the taste for medieval satire, and the reformatory impulse. But he was considerably more than that. He was a great poet, one of the greatest of the entire Renaissance, and an artist of a caliber that the Italian comic playwrights of the period could not match. Unlike Sachs, who wrote for the small bourgeoisie of a German city, Gil Vicente wrote for the court of King Manuel of Portugal, one of the most brilliant courts in Europe. His popular characters, the peasant, the friar, the corrupt judge, the soldier of fortune, had to make a court of Renaissance knights laugh, a court that included many humanists and men of genuine learning. This forced a refinement of comic technique that Sachs simply never needed. The humor of Gil Vicente is not coarse, jovial laughter. It is something considerably more subtle and considerably more devastating. He was bilingual, writing with equal mastery in Portuguese and Castilian. And his plays reflect not just every facet of Portuguese life in the early 16th century, but the wider life of Renaissance Europe, of which Lisbon at that moment was one of the most dynamic centers. Sailors and traders brought the world to Portugal's shores, and Gil Vicente brought the world to the Portuguese stage. Spain, Italy, France, Flanders, the new territories across the ocean. He was simultaneously a son of the Portuguese people and a true cosmopolitan of the Renaissance. And in his boisterous, savoring laughter there echoes something of the cry of jubilation with which the humanist Ulrich von Hutten greeted the new age. Juvat vivere. It is good to be alive. As a man of the Renaissance living in a Catholic country, Gil Vicente was Erasmian. The Dutch scholar Erasmus of Rotterdam himself was made aware of the Portuguese playwright's work. It was Damião de Gois who brought him to Erasmus's attention. Gil Vicente demands, through the powerful instrument of his satirical laughter, the reform of the church, the purification of the clergy, and the return to the customs of the early Christian community. The Auto de Feira, the Clerigo de Beira, and the Farsa dos Physicos are central works of an Erasmian theater, filled throughout with allusions and parallels to Erasmus's own ideas. And yet it would be a mistake to read him as a modern free thinker or an anti-clerical in the 19th century sense. His criticism of the church and the clergy is moral, not dogmatic. When we look at the Auto de Alma, with all its jibes at monks and scholastic philosophy, we find Catholic orthodoxy underneath, and even a kind of moving faith. In the middle of the struggle between angel and devil for the human soul, Gil Vicente defends the Catholic doctrine of free will against Protestant determinism, as Erasmus himself did. His irreverence is medieval in spirit. The clergy in that world were a professional corporation like any other, held to higher standards precisely because of their privileged place in the social hierarchy, and therefore fair game for the harshest criticism when they failed. His masterpiece in this register is the trilogy of the barges, the Barca do Inferno, the Barca do Purgatorio, and the Barca de Gloria, in which the souls of the dead from every class of society are ferried to their judgment. The concept recalls the social satire of Sebastian Brandt's Ship of Fools and the medieval Dance of Death tradition. But no predecessor can be compared to Gil Vicente in aesthetic terms. Where those works are moralistic and schematic, he is dramatically alive, filling each soul with a voice, an accent, a particular rhythm of speech that belongs to their profession and their province. Only Geoffrey Chaucer has a comparable gift for dramatic characterization. And in one respect, Gil Vicente surpasses even Chaucer as a lyric poet. Chaucer is primarily a narrative genius. Gil Vicente is also a supreme master of song. His lyrics have no parallel in the entire theatrical tradition of the Iberian Peninsula. Songs like Remando, Veo Remedores, Adurai, Montañas, and the Spanish Muy Graciosa y es la Doncella, which the 20th century critic Damaso Alonso called perhaps the most simply beautiful poem in the Spanish language, are works of a lyric spontaneity and perfection that one must go to Shakespeare and the Elizabethan playwrights to find matched. Gil Vicente represents, in this sense, the old, joyful Portugal, the Portugal of open laughter and unaffected feeling, before the invasion of the learned, serious, Italianate humanism that would change the literary culture irrevocably. His legacy is long and runs in multiple directions. Lope de Vega, the towering figure of Spanish Golden Age theater, is in many ways his heir. The childlike credulity, the irreverent criticism, the emotional religiosity without being portrayed as quote, unquote, fanaticism, the encyclopedic knowledge of popular traditions. All of it flows from Gil Vicente. The romantic poet and playwright Almeida Garrett in the 19th century effectively rediscovered him for the modern world, using him as a weapon against a petrified classicism. And Rafael Alberti, one of the great Spanish poets of the 20th century, listed Gil Vicente among his very first guides, alongside the old songbooks and ballad collections. There's a phrase worth recalling here from the critic Aubrey Bell, which was originally written about another Portuguese poet, but applies equally well to Gil Vicente. For many people, Portuguese literature begins with Luís de Camões, and in making that assumption, they miss its most enchanting and most original part. Gil Vicente is exactly that missing part, not a precursor, not a footnote, not a charming curiosity in the margins of literary history, but a great poet, a poet of universal category, and one of the Renaissance's most alive and most human voices. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. The sources used are in the description. And see you next time with another human story.